I would love to hear about your retreat that you just had. And I guess I haven't done like a ton of psychedelic medicine. Like I've done like 2 different journeys, and like the most recent one was like the most intense one. And you said that you had someone come up to you and like, are these women on ayahuasca? Because like they were having such big breakthroughs.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you, because I do believe it's all inside. Like, I don't think you need to take anything to have these transformative experiences. I just think maybe some people like need a bigger kick in the butt. And like, that's what psychedelics can kind of offer as a jump start to
and
that.
it gets that part of your brain out of the way so it can really start to come to the forefront.
So I guess for someone who's trying to do this without anything, like taking anything externally, like what is the process to like embody it? Because that's the trick. Like I have intellectually known so much of the things that I discovered, but I embodied them last week, and that is a different world.
You are exactly right. It's a completely different story. And it's why I really moved my work out of the private practice talk therapy scene, because I recognized there were limitations. There's only so far we can go. Verbal processing is amazing, but it only takes us so far. We can only talk about the thing your dad said to you so many times. We can only see that was his fear, his this, his that, right? How many times are we going to talk about it before you have an experience that either releases it, or in some cases, dependent on experiences, alchemizes it, and takes that fossil fuel that's been stuck inside of you and turns it into renewable energy for your life. So I take women. It would be nearly impossible for me to explain what I do in this podcast. And in all truth, it's almost would be a dishonor of the work to try to explain it. It is, I will say this, extremely intense, very, very powerful. I hold a huge safety in that room. I spend a day, almost a better part of a day, creating a profound trust and safety, not trust in me, trust in themselves. So ceremonially, I get them there to this place where I then demonstrate and lead. It's essentially rage release practices and grief release practices that we channel. And there's 3 steps that build it to get there. And then I demonstrate it. I'm very vulnerable, and I tell them like, okay, this is what I'm releasing right now. Sometimes it's something from the past. Sometimes it's collective rage and pain for the world and for women and children especially. But I take them through this process, and we have buckets everywhere. And I normalize that it has taken such a huge energetic frequency to push this down, to pad that in the back of your unconscious mind, that what you're going to notice is as we do this, you might start to feel the vomit want to come up. You might start to feel that you have to rip your clothes off. You might start screaming. You might start thrashing. No, that is the pain finally feeling safe to come out. And when you do this in groups of women, it is profound, because the more one woman vomits or screams, it gives permission for the woman next to her to release a little deeper. And so then we've got a whole room full of women just letting not just their pain out, but the collective pain of thousands of years of women and what we have been carrying. So it's the pain also of your mother from when you were in her womb, and in your grandmother when you were actually in your mom's ovaries, because she already had all of her eggs, and the potentiality of you already lived inside of even your grandmother when you were inside of your mom, when she was a fetus in your grandmother, and all the way back. So we are, because women often say to me, it feels so big, Amanda, it feels so overwhelming. And I said, because it's not just yours. You are carrying pain that is on behalf of all women who've ever walked in this world and women who are, and we dedicate all of my retreats to women who will never have access to this work, that will never have the privilege or opportunity to sit in a room like this and do this work. We're dedicating it not just to the little maidens inside of us who we abandon, but for every woman in the world. And so that release feels so big, and is so big because it's thousands of years of pain that's been carried and stored inside of ourselves. Yeah.
So I love all of that. And I think before I started getting into all of this, I would have been so skeptical. And the first time that I saw like those release practices, I was very judgmental, and I really thought it was like a lot of attention-seeking behavior, and there was nothing to it. And then I did it, and I was like, well, I can't judge it if I don't try it first. So
I love that.
I did it, and I was like, oh my gosh. And like how long it even lasted. And I think it needs to be a regular practice, because it's stuff just it's almost like if you had all of these fish and those were in different levels of your consciousness, and you cast a net and you swoop some up, you think you just cleared it out, but all that happened is some of the fish moved up and then there's more coming. Right. So you think that you're clear now, and you might be for a time, but it's because the other stuff hasn't moved up to your consciousness yet.
That's exactly right.
So I think it needs to be regular. When this happens, it's like you're experiencing life differently. Like for me, my body feels different. When I have sex with my husband, I'm like, the other thing I was doing was not this. Like, we're doing something different. And it's because I'm safe. I now feel safe. So now I'm not allowed to be in my body. And how unsafe I have felt for probably my whole life. I had no idea, because I have just numbed myself to the point where I'm like, this is functioning. This is normal. Instead of being really tuned into myself, which has been screaming pretty much my whole life. Like, you are not safe and you need to slow down. And I think that was kind of the biggest lesson that I had from last week. And it's funny because right before you got here, I had a phone call with like my doctor. It's like private healthcare, and they're amazing. And the woman was talking to me about my cortisol, and she's like, how do you feel? Like, do you feel stressed? I go, if I'm being honest, no, I don't feel stressed. What's happened is I've convinced myself I'm not stressed. And she started laughing. She's like, I'm so glad that you have that awareness, because like your body is saying you are like chronically stressed. And she's like trying to help me with like meditation and breath work and these kinds of things. But if I didn't do this panel that is objective, saying you are in fight or flight for far too long, my mind, which I've learned I cannot trust, it is the biggest liar that I've ever met. My mind is telling me it's all good. You got this. And how much that's affected even just like my marriage, because it's this, I've got this. Instead of seeing this person who loves you like infinitely, and he's like, I will help shoulder this. But because of my own past, I don't trust that I can, delegate it in any way. And I'm sure you probably saw a lot of that. I think that's probably like a huge common trauma or narrative that a lot of women have, is like, I'm shouldering all of this, and like lack of trust, lack of safety.
Yes. And oftentimes the childhood experience was I couldn't trust. And the people that I was supposed to, quote unquote, trust the most let me down. And so I think often that's where that experience of these primary people in your life, when they let you down, or worse off, they abuse you, you learn that the world is not safe. And that is not an overnight undoing. That process takes time. And you're exactly right. Like, your analogy with the fish is so beautiful. One of the things that I always think about is like, every day, I don't get up this morning and say, well, you know what? I brushed my teeth 3 days ago. I don't need to brush them today. I get up and I brush my teeth every single day, because there's that buildup, right? I floss my teeth. And if I want to take it even a step further, maybe I do some tongue scraping. If I want to take it a step further, I swish with coconut oil. I do the oil pulling. So there are levels at which I can clean my mouth. And I think it's fascinating that we often don't think about how we clean and clear all of the emotional buildup that happens over decades and decades, and how we become offensive, we become unapproachable, we become all of these things, or we spill over into other people unknowingly because we're not emotionally hygienic. So just in the way we teach children oral hygiene, we don't teach them anything about sourcing their emotions. But if you watch a 2-year-old have a temper tantrum in a grocery store, you're like, they know exactly how to be in the moment. Or an animal in the woods, like how they shake and clear it and then they keep going. But we somehow, as we get into, like, for girls, the data shows after around the age of 10 years old, she starts losing connection to who she just inherently is and starts performing. At 10 years old, she starts to perform, to be pleasing, to be chosen, to be loved. And so when you spend the majority of your life then thereafter performing, it is so hard to have a connection to your body. Before I came here, I have a lot of clients in Boxer who work with me just through voice messaging every day. And one of my clients just said to me, Amanda, since doing this work, I have noticed, I feel like I'm channeling my whole life now. My business is being channeled. My relationship is being channeled. What I want to eat, my body, the way I move, I'm just channeling, where before I was thinking from my logical brain. And to surrender into this, how is it possible my body knows everything that I need to be doing next? When I feel, because I talk about how I intuitively feel my way through everything. There have been a handful of other podcasts that wanted to fly me to different places in the last couple of weeks, and it was a no for me. And I don't know why or how. I can't even explain it to you. I just intuitively, there's feelings of like, no, I want to say yes to this one. I want to say no to that one. And I just know. I don't go into like all this research. I do a quick dive. I talk to my team and I'm like, yeah, I said yes to this one. I said no to all of these ones. And they're like, well, why? I'm like, I can't explain it to you. It's just, I just know. There's a trust and a knowing this is where I need to be.
No, absolutely. But you can't get there if you're not clear, because there's no connectivity there.